Never be so dogmatic in the views of who you are following to the point to where you are blinded by someone's advice. And this is the exact feeling that I get when I follow a lot of you guys in the Neville Goddard community. So many people in the Neville Goddard community, you guys just think Neville is perfect. You think Neville was this great manifester, that he was born a great manifester, and that he has said no wrong, and that his teachings are easy and that they are law and that everybody else doesn't know what they're talking about, or that there is no such thing as nuance to conversations, that all you have to do is assume and live in the end. Understand no one is ever above criticism. Not me, not Neville, not Abraham Hicks. Nobody is above criticism. It's okay to question the greats 100% because everything is not going to make sense to you that's said by them, and it's not going to apply to you right away in the way that you think it is, most likely. What's making me make this video is recently I put up the video of Tim and I having a conversation about what the SP gurus aren't going to tell you. In that video, I had mentioned how, in my opinion, and Tim agreed, how Neville Goddard really didn't do a great job at telling people how to deal with the middle, how to deal with the 3D when manifesting whatever it is they want to manifest. All Neville did was tell people simply to just assume and to live in the end, as we all know. But I've stated religiously in my videos that that advice is easier said than done. Telling people to just assume and live in the end is so easy to say, but actually applying it to your life is a totally different animal, especially if you grew up a certain way, especially if you have experiences and traumas that other people might not have. And my whole thing is two things can be true. Neville can be right in what he's saying, assume and feel it real and live in the end is all you have to do. But what also can be true is what Tim and I were saying in the video, and how Neville did a pretty bad job at telling people how to navigate the 3D when problems show up. Because I personally think that Neville wasn't a great teacher when it came to dealing with the 3D. And I don't even think Abdullah was great to Neville when telling Neville how to navigate the 3D, because he would just repeat stuff to Neville. Neville would be stuck there looking lost. As I said in my past videos, I'm in Barbados. I'm in Barbados. And Abdullah would tell him, "You're already there. You're already there." And Neville would be sitting there looking like, "What? What do you mean? I'm not in Barbados. I'm in New York right now." And Abdullah would just precisely keep saying that. And then you guys remember Abdullah slammed the door in Neville's face. And so that let me know that Abdullah was probably getting frustrated at Neville, and Neville was also getting frustrated with Abdullah because Abdullah wasn't explaining to Neville, "Yo, how can I do this? How am I in the 3D?" Which tells me that Abdullah is not above criticism either. None of us are as teachers. When you decide to teach, you must know you are going to be criticized for whatever that comes out of your mouth. I told you guys about the rule of 10 in one of my other videos. The rule of 10 says that there will be three people that like and agree with what you're saying. There will be three people that don't like and disagree with what you're saying. And then there will be four people that are completely oblivious or don't care with what you're saying. But I'm bringing this up because the Neville Goddard community and even some coaches online have garnered this type of cult like following. And I want you guys to understand no coach, like I said earlier, is above criticism. But what is making me make this video is I had someone leave a comment recently, and it was on this video that I guys just told you about with me and Tim talking about how Neville didn't do a good job of telling people how to live in the middle, how to deal with being in the middle. And this guy's comment went something like this, quote, "Sorry guys, but Neville Goddard is the original source. I never comment on videos, but Bob Proctor agreed on assumption and vibration completing the goal. You don't worry about the how. Neville stated clearly the gestation period is the only thing he did not know. He clearly states persistence in the doing in lecture Law of Liberty. These guys are finding an angle for selling a package. Just stick to the original source. Neville Goddard. Keep repeating his lectures. Bob Proctor also explained forget the how. Putting focus on these things takes away the assumption. This person that left this comment is definitely right in what Neville said. The gestation period is definitely something that he didn't know, and he definitely stated persistence. But as I've said religiously, all of this stuff is easier said than done. If Neville's advice is so easy and so clear cut, there would be no people teaching this stuff. People would not be working with coaches trying to understand this stuff better. The fact that people are working with coaches, whoever you're working with, to try to understand this stuff better shows me that Neville, that's literally living proof that Neville did not do a great job at showing people how to actually live and operate in the 3D from point A to point B of their manifestation. So let's break down this guy's comment. He said Neville is the original source. Neville's not the original source. So many people talked about this stuff before Neville. People that a lot of you guys never even heard of, because Neville is always the main focus. But Florence was before Neville. Emil Quay was before Neville. Thomas Troward, who a lot of you guys don't know, was before Neville. There were so many people that were before Neville. If you want to go back to the Bible, Jesus, of course, obviously. So that debunks Neville being the original source, because Neville wasn't the original source, and neither was Abdullah. So all of the Neville fanboys, put your pants back on. And you know what's funny? I can tell when people don't watch my videos because they leave ignorant comments like this. And I can tell when people don't comprehend the videos because they'll leave stupid comments like this. Now let's talk about persistence, because I literally responded to this comment and I said all of these things. I mentioned how Neville isn't the original source. I mentioned how this guy probably didn't comprehend the video. I mentioned how persistence, how many people are persisting every day? How many people have been persisting every day for months or years and they feel frustrated? Again, why do they feel frustrated? Because Neville's teachings don't do a great job of telling people how to deal with this frustration in the middle. Just persisting is not an answer to most people. People have been persisting for 2, 3 years now, probably longer. So you can't just tell people, oh, keep persisting. Somebody that pays you however much money, 100, 200, 300, 400, $500, doesn't want to hear you get on a coaching call with them and tell them, oh, just persist. Somebody that pays one, two, three, four, $500 doesn't want to get affirmations that tell you to just persist. Give you 5 affirmations and tell you, here, just persist in repeating these. They don't want to hear that. So this person also goes on to say, just stick to the original source in Neville. And I said that sticking to the original source in Neville has gotten thousands of people nowhere and frustrated. People need help in dealing with the middle, period. And so this person goes on to say, quote, there is no middle period if the assumption is already done. And this person goes on to say, quote, there is no middle period if the assumption is done. You already have it. There is no need for techniques in the middle. You are also not on the level Neville was on to criticize him. Let's be honest. End quote. You know, I honestly don't expect anything less from people like this that worship Neville Goddard's teachings. And I honestly don't expect anything less from people who worship some of these other YouTubers out here or other coaches, because people find people and they become fanboys. And that's okay. You know, I accept it because I understand duality exists. I understand polarity exists. So I totally accept it. Bottom line, Neville is not above criticism. Like I said earlier, nobody's above criticism. It's a fair point to say that I'm not on Neville's level of manifestation. It's a fair point to say that. But to say that I can't criticize him, pump the brakes. And furthermore, was Neville Goddard really as powerful as people think that he is, because it wasn't until later in Neville's life that he actually started teaching and explaining this stuff. Neville struggled early on with understanding the laws of the universe, understanding what Abdullah was teaching him. And Neville also took the route of what many YouTube coaches are taking is they're simply becoming successful by talking about law of attraction, law of assumption. That's exactly what Neville did is he began teaching about it. It's not necessarily that Neville was super duper duper successful before he started teaching and talking about the law. He learned about it, it interested him, and he began teaching it and writing books about it. And if Neville was such a powerful manifester, why did he die from a brain aneurysm? Couldn't he have prevented that if he was such a powerful manifester? See, these are things that people don't think about. I think about these things. That's not to discredit anything Neville said, but I'm thinking about this stuff and it really makes you wonder when you really start to peel back the layers. And it shows you this advice isn't one size fits all necessarily. One could even argue that Neville is way more popular now in the 21st century than he was back when he was alive around his time. If I had to guess, I would guess that Neville was not that popular back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s because what he was teaching was considered blasphemous to much of the world. The same way Rev Ike was considered blasphemous for his prosperity teachings. A lot of these guys during their time, they were criticized. Their teachings were not popular. So I just want to really put stuff in context. We think just because Neville wrote books on this stuff that he was super duper successful automatically off the rip. But realistically, there we really don't know a ton about Neville's life. We don't really know how he lived. We don't really know what his life was like. We just believe it because he wrote it back around the time he wrote it and he wrote multiple books and gave multiple lectures. But Neville, in my opinion, he could be no different than somebody on YouTube that's making YouTube videos on how to get rich. And that person has never been rich before. Neville could have 100% been that person. He could have just liked prosperity teaching. He could have just gave us a handful of examples from his own personal life or from the lives of other people. And he could have just used that to write his books. And then people blindly just followed his advice. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But the whole point of what I'm trying to say is I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Neville. I don't care if it's myself. Nobody is above criticism. Question everything. Test everything. Even as Neville says, test it. Test it. See if it works. See if it follows you. See if this is what you're supposed to be doing. But this idea of Neville is the only way, Neville is the original source. It's laughable to me. And it's wild how dogmatic people are in their views of Neville. When so many people, contrary to what you may think on the internet, on YouTube, so many people struggle with Neville's teachings. And so many people find people's teachings like Florence Scovel Shin a hell of a lot easier to follow and to understand than Neville because I think Florence Scovel Shin does a hell of a lot better job than Neville does at explaining to people what to do in the 3D world and how to navigate it. Neville Goddard very well himself may have became even more successful by teaching people about law of assumption, law of attraction, instead of actually applying it to his life in a way that a lot of people think that it's going to work or applying it the way that he teaches himself. I mean, you got to think about some of the things that Neville went through in his journey from getting out of the army, right? That took time. going to Barbados, struggling as a dancer. Neville had a SP, but he got a new SP because he got a new wife. Neville himself had to evolve and go through stages. It wasn't like Neville created this SP marriage and it was so happy. And no, Neville got a new marriage. He got rid of his old SP and got a new SP. So that shows you even Neville himself didn't have things figured out, because if he did have things figured out, he would have stayed with his original wife. He wouldn't have tried to manifest a new wife. Why didn't Neville live in the assumption that his first marriage was okay and it was going to work? Why did he want a new relationship? These are things that people don't think about. These are questions that I ask myself and that I think about. If Neville understood the law so much, why is it that he died way earlier than his mentor? Apparently, Abdullah was about 81 when he met Neville in 1929. And apparently, Abdullah died at 109 years old. So, if Neville understood the law so much, why didn't he end up on the same path as his mentor Abdullah, who lived past 100? You see, even Neville himself had a lot of blocks. Even Neville himself had a lot of limiting beliefs. Even Neville himself, he taught the law, but he was nowhere on the level that Abdullah was, in my opinion. Abdullah was the real deal. Neville wasn't the real deal because Neville had blocks just like a lot of us, if not all of us, have blocks. So, as much as a lot of you out there like to talk and act like Neville had his shit together, he didn't have his shit together the way a lot of you think that he did. And so, again, this isn't to take away from the great work that Neville has done, because I'm extremely grateful for the work that he's done. But like I said in this video and in past videos, no one is above criticism. Two things can be true: Neville's works can be great, Neville's works can be life changing, but also Neville could have not taught certain aspects of LOA so well. There's nothing wrong with saying that. I don't understand why that's such a blasphemous thing to say. So I think it's a fair statement to say that I'm not on Neville Goddard's level, but I also think it's a fair statement to say that Neville Goddard did a shitty job at teaching people how to deal with the 3D when manifesting. And that's why I'm here, is to really help you guys get a genuine understanding of how to navigate the 3D world through the ups and downs of whatever it is you're trying to manifest when you are getting from point A to B. Because I've understood for a very long time now, many years, that life isn't black and white. People try to make life black and white, but life has a shit ton of gray areas. And the people that learn how to navigate those gray areas, the people that get comfortable in gray areas, those are the people that become successful. And to be a powerful manifester, you have to be 100% comfortable in the gray areas of life. You have to get comfortable with uncertainty. People that are uncomfortable with uncertainty, those are the ones that can do big things and not have fear and anxiety. And that's the level I'm trying to help all of you get to, is to be comfortable in the gray areas.